Okay. So how's everybody been? Good. Good. You requested that we come back to the table. We're here. We're kind of have a short team because of vacations and other things that are going on. Ashley's gone, so it makes it difficult to crunch some numbers, but we're ready to proceed however you want to proceed.
Okay. Well, you know, I don't think that this should come as any surprise. We've got an offer, and I feel like you guys should have some idea of what the offer is. What we're asking for is whatever COLA the council approves, and 3.25. And 3.25 is what we value a step as, and so this would put us on par with other city employees who are getting a COLA and a step.
I need one for Andrew. Thank you. So in all bargaining units shall receive a percentage increase bi-weekly that is equal to COLA market adjustment applied to general employee. Which are you asking for?
We're asking for whatever the council approves for the COLA for general employees.
But we don't get COLAs, so that's what I'm trying to understand. Are you asking for a
Well,
COLA?
we're asking for what the adjustment they're making to the scale then.
But as what type?
As a COLA or a market adjustment,
Yeah, it has
because
to
the
be.
effects are different.
Yeah.
We're asking for it as a COLA, the other would be a market adjustment. Well,
I just want to make sure I understand.
I mean, the baseline is that we get that amount plus 3.25 added to our base.
And that I get. It's the ad pays that are affected based on what we call it. So I need to understand that before we can review it.
It's a COLA.
Yeah, it's a
So you
COLA.
want,
It's a
so
COLA.
this is a COLA.
So whatever the market adjustment is a COLA, and then the steps are a,
Yeah, step would be a base adjustment.
Andrew, did you get that? Okay.
So just from a hypothetical standpoint, so I can understand, make sure that there's no misperception on my part. If the general employees get a 2.5%, then you would get the 2.5% plus a 3.25%. So it would be a 5.75% to the base.
Yes.
Well, not quite.
Well, yeah, I mean,
So this is written to match the effect that you would see on the hybrid scale from a step and a market adjustment. And so they don't add necessarily. One is applied and then the other is applied. So the total ends up being, I think, like a 5.8. If you follow.
If you add the 2.5 first, then you're adding a 3.25 above that after that. That
Well-
would be an increase from just adding them. as a linear
Well,
equation.
you're going to apply the 2.5, and then you're going to apply the 3.25.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So you're doing another 3.25 of the 2.5.
Yes.
And that's the third component of the linear equation.
Yes.
Yeah, which would reflect how it is on the hybrid pay plan. If someone gets a step and then gets a 2.5 adjustment to that, then it compounds that interest as well.
And then conversely, if the council doesn't approve a step, then that's not there. So it's basically just whatever is given to all general employees that are behind market within will.
So if there's no approval of a step for the generals, then the 3.25%, you're not asking for that?
Correct.
3.25 for each step that is granted. So if 0 are granted, then it's 0.
And if 2 steps are granted, which we know, but if 2 were granted, then 2 would be.
Is there any consideration built into this for your ad pays that adjust based off your biweekly base?
They would adjust as they do in the contract. Or you call them ad pays, but they're part of our salary. They're
I
part of
understand,
our.
but they're attached to Schedule A, so therefore they affect based off that. I
The
just want to
COLA
make sure.
would, the COLA would affect it, but not the market adjustment.
Well, the market adjustment adjusts
Well,
several of them.
Right, but what,
But not
the steps, I
longevity.
guess, the steps would not affect those, but the COLA would affect.
Well, COLA would affect longevity and paramedic longevity, if I understand correctly. And then the market would adjust, like your holiday, your clothing.
So
Not clothing, clothing is COLA.
Clothing's COLA.
Clothing is COLA.
So the clothing and longevity are adjusted by an index that is approved by the council. So a COLA would apply to longevity and clothing allowance. But because you would be doing a 2.7 or 2.5 or whatever to our base as well as the market adjustment, then those would affect our base wage, and so they would affect anything that's
And
adjusted by base wage.
And I don't have an argument against that. I'm just asking to make sure I understand.
It's black and white.
Well, it
It
is
would
you.
follow
You
that.
wrote it. I'm trying to make sure I understand, so when we sit and talk about it, I don't have to come back and ask more clarifying questions. It's just to make sure I understand.
Yes, but the only thing that would be adjusted by the COLA would be the things that say COLA by the count, as approved by the council.
I understand that, Andy. Thank you.
You have questions?
I think I have what I need to understand.
Okay. Let us go into caucus and go through and make sure that we fully understand, and then we'll come back and respond. Do they have a conflict? of interest?
Or you can stay in here.
You can stay in here. As soon as we're off the record. Whoever designed that.
I know, they did
should be
just
shot.
torture me.
Thank you for giving us the time, because we wanted to come back with a proposal that contained all the necessary information and stuff, so we really had to build some salary schedule or new schedule A so that we could see exactly what it was and that there wouldn't be any confusion. This is an interesting negotiation because of the limited nature of it. We're limited by the contract for this year to negotiate changes to Schedule A only. And that really puts an onus on both sides not to, in my mind, to increase what agreements we could reach into. So what we've put together is a base increase proposal to Schedule A of 4%. And it's guaranteed. So it's not a situation of what the generals get or don't get. It's a 4% to the base of Schedule A. Now, we wanted to show, because the 1% increase that was automatic last year in the contract, administratively, there wasn't a new Schedule A built. So the Schedule A that's in the current contract is really for the 2017 and 18. So what we had to do is add the 1% to build a new Schedule A, which is what you're being paid on this year, before we added the 4%. So that's really what we did, is we start out with the 17-18, we add 1% to that to get to really what the current Schedule A, if it would have been changed and attached to the contract last year, would be, and then we add the 4% to that. So it's, rather than just basically saying we're adding 5% of what's in the contract, we wanted to make sure that everybody understood that it's a 1%, which is where you're at today, and then a 4% over and above that. Now, I understand that you're talking about a step a lot in your offer. The dilemma I have is that you guys don't have steps, you have longevity. And the fact that the generals are on a different salary schedule that includes steps, and that's how they're paid, I think it's a comparison of apples to oranges, because you don't have a step. You're still going to get your longevity increases under the contract, which is the equivalent of the step mechanism in the hybrid. Now, if you ever want to go to a step-based salary schedule, we can start talking about that next year. But this year, we're looking at only increasing the base amount to Schedule A, and we're willing to guarantee a 4% increase to the base amount of Schedule A as our offer.
So I disagree with one thing you said there, in that the steps within the city's hybrid pay plan are an attempt to get people to market. It's been widely broadcast by HR that Step 6 in the city's hybrid pay plan equals market. And we spent a year going over a comp study which shows that we're an average of 22% behind. And when we tried to bring that up in these negotiations, you've chosen to ignore that. And in reality, what we need to do is we need to start making progress to figure out where we can get to that 22%. The regular city employees, just as an example, on the step scale, if you're an H1 and you go from step 1, which is 1166, to step 2, you're at 1212, which is a 3.95%. In addition to that, there's going to be a market adjustment to the entire plan of potentially up to 2.5%. And our longevity equals 0.5% a year. And it does not, it doesn't come to the point to where it starts making that market adjustment for the fact that we're that far behind. So how do you justify only giving us roughly what a person from step 1 in the HL1 is getting in a step, and not giving us the 2.5% that they're also getting to the scale, to the entire scale?
Because you have different salary schedules.
Okay, we're both behind.
But
You're giving them a higher percentage.
Being behind is not the issue. They're behind as well. Okay,
Right.
That's not the issue that we're talking about here. The issue is you want to use a different salary schedule to justify something for your salary schedule. We're here to talk about Schedule A and Schedule A only. Now, any advancements on Schedule A obviously increase the base salary, which then you can calculate into your calculations on where you're at market or not at market. But we're limited to talking about Schedule A. And we're limited by the amount of money that we have available to us with all aspects of all employees in the city. and we're willing to guarantee a 4% so that you're not at the whims of the budget makers when the dust finally settles on how much the generals get or don't get. And so it's a base increase, which is required by the contract, and that's all we're talking about now.
And we tried to talk in the beginning about how far we were behind based on the comp study that we've done. And we spent a year investing time on both sides to try to come up with a reasonable way of determining what our market was. And you've argued against that this whole time. So the reason that we've started using the city step scale to try to make that comparison is because we're only asking for what everybody else is getting. That's the way that our proposal's written. If people don't get raises, we don't get raises. In this current contract, we've taken a 0, and a 1, and now we're only being offered the difference between a step 1 and a step 2 on the entry level of the city's pay plan without even any sort of a market adjustment.
We're offering you a 4% guaranteed base increase, which is something that the city employees are not getting.
They're not getting it guaranteed,
That's right.
but that's the only difference. I mean, they stand to get quite a bit more. We're just asking for equal treatment. You've talked all the way through about equal treatment, and you can't offer us something you're not offering other people.
We think we're giving you equal treatment, and within the confines of what the scope of the negotiations are this year, based upon a contract that you agreed to 3 years ago. We're talking about increasing or making changes to Schedule A only, and that's what we're offering.
And this is an agreement that you agreed to or however many years ago, 3 years ago as well. And in that negotiations, we talked about trying to streamline this process by getting together and working together on a comp study. And you've largely ignored that. I think we need to, as a group, go take a brief caucus, and then we'll come back.
We're back on.
Okay. Well, we feel like, our offer, if you notice, it only spoke to adjustments to Schedule A. Both sides have only been making adjustments to Schedule A, so the point that you're only making adjustments to Schedule A with your offer and ours isn't, is not necessarily the case, because ours is only an adjustment to Schedule A.
If you took, that's what I said, that's what I meant. I apologize, because that's not what I meant. What I meant is your justification for a portion of your adjustment was based upon a contract that you don't have, the steps. And so I view your offer to be at 5.8, whatever the ultimate number is, increased to the base. You just split it into two separate components, but it's still just an increase to the base on Schedule A. I absolutely agree with you on that.
And one thing that our offer does is it gives the decision makers the flexibility to make the decision. It doesn't put anything undue on the city. It doesn't make them pay more for us than they would for anybody else. And it doesn't lock us in to being paid less than they're going to pay anybody else. We feel comfortable with our offer, and that's where we're standing.
Okay. It does put undue pressure on the city decision makers because of the 5.8 portion. What it does is it forces those decision makers then to look and say, if we give the city workers a step, we've agreed to give the fire a step based at 3.25, which has this cost. In the best interest of the use of the money, we may not give the general people a step and then not give the fire a step. We're trying to eliminate that, build a budget that secures a 4% increase to the base for the fire and gives then the city council, and we have to sell this to city council. This isn't,
I don't feel like equal treatment's very much of a hard sell. All we're asking for is the same percentage that everybody else is getting. And so, yeah, more or less. And it's actually less.
okay. This is our last offer,
This is our last offer.
okay? Then we'll have to decide whether we're at impasse.
Well, I believe we've already started the process for being at impasse. Because we've started the fact-finding process, I don't know why we would not continue down that route, because that is how we decide and we decided before that we were at impasse and we started that process.
So you felt you were at impasse when you started fact-finding?
Well, Idaho statute requires that if we don't have an agreement within 30 days, that we're at impasse and we start that process. I mean, that's where we were at before.
I disagree with the interpretation of the statute.
Okay.
But if you want to declare impasse, go ahead. Whatever you want to do.
Well, I mean, what's that?
That already was.
Yeah, I feel like that's where we already were. I mean,
Okay.
if you've got an offer that's not acceptable to us and we've got an offer that's not acceptable to you, then I don't know where we go from here other than that.
Okay. So we'll re-gear up the fact-finding process. Is that where we're at?
Barring a change of opinion on one side or the other.
Okay.
I mean, like I said, we've given you guys the tools to be able to take this to the decision makers. You guys are their team, but ultimately they're the ones that have to make the decision.
That's correct.
And I mean, like I said, I feel like equal treatment is a very solid ground to stand on.
Okay.
Should we caucus one more time? Just for the sake?
I guess I don't see any need to at this point in time.
Okay?
We'll re-gear up the fact-finding. Thank you.
Thank you.